It has been a very interesting and memorable 3 years for Naughty Dog fans. I believe it was September 25th of 2019 when we were all last on the same page. On the day that followed, everyone was treated to, depending on who you ask, either terrible news or terrific news. Last of Us Part 2's multiplayer future was hanging in the balance. The nonchalant delivery of this news from Naughty Dog to the player was what felt like the beginning of the entire fan base being polarized. The discussion of multiplayer being attached to games with a history of being prominent in the single-player narrative-driven space is not something we're unfamiliar with, but there is enough product out there from the last decade of the studio that says otherwise. There are so many more factors at play now. Naughty Dog is now a very large studio who employ many more people than when they used to put out an Uncharted game every 2 years, and games at their scale take more than twice the time to develop than they used to. Finding a way to keep people locked into your ecosystem is easy when multiplayer counterparts are available, which made the potential ending of that tradition with The Last of Us Part 2 feel deflating. It makes the apparent length of the wait for the next project feel much longer. It's not necessarily a bad thing, there are plenty of great games coming out all the time, but most of them are not delivering on the production value you get here. Everyone has favorite studios whose games speak to them, and it's those games that live rent-free in your head until launch day. This is essentially a long-winded way of trying to portray the rewarding nature of good IP utilization. Naughty Dog looks to be figuring this out in a big way, it just requires more patience than we initially realized. 7 months after the mere hours-long cancellation of a new Naughty Dog multiplayer experience was the largest fan dynamic change I think any game has ever seen. On April 27, 2020, when large amounts of The Last of Us Part 2's plot and gameplay sections leaked, it changed everything regarding existing as a fan of the series or of Naughty Dog's games when you're on the internet. People jumped to conclusions without seeing a bigger picture. Some people who champion Naughty Dog's ability to tell most of their stories in gameplay pretended to forget that when trying to seal a game's fate they had never even played by way of an uneducated guess. The Last of Us's pandemic world paired with our own made you want Naughty Dog's next game to hit as soon as possible to escape the ever-increasing divisive conversation surrounding The Last of Us Part 2. I love the game to death, but 2 years later you still can't speak about it on the internet without somebody foaming at the mouth to tell you why they're still deeply bothered by it. Whatever side you landed on, you find yourself stuck in the same conversation loops guessing what could happen next or when is the next project so the conversations can change. But the argumentative conversations surrounding The Last of Us had 3 whole years to breathe. 2 months in those 3 years were pre-launch where people had way too much time to theorize the worst and predetermine their viewpoints. Naughty Dog knowingly took a risk telling the story in the way that they did, and there are surely some who were not going to like it. It's the reasoning that matters. These last 3 years would look so much different without that leak. But sometimes a story that requires you to look deeper brings out the most shallow people. In the 2 years since Part 2 is launched, we have known of many projects happening under the Naughty Dog umbrella that hadn't been formally announced. With Part 2's leaks also came confirmation of their next multiplayer in its earliest form, so all that was left to do was wait. Among the 2-year wait is many gaming events and showcases with an increasing hope that Naughty Dog is ready to pull back the curtain on a multitude of experiences, being more sure at every event that this is the one, until it most definitely isn't.
And that's a wrap.
That is until June 9th at Summer Games Fest. It had become well known that the long-rumored remake of The Last of Us Part 1 would be making an appearance here, but anything else was a pipe dream at best. The full reveal of the game leaking by Sony's hand on PlayStation Direct mere hours before the event lowered everybody's guard, which made what felt like a Naughty Dog state of play ending the show very surprising. Naughty Dog has a lot to talk about, but they've been tight-lipped for years now. The desperation for info on Factions 2 has driven the conversation. With no official title, Neil Druckmann confirms it on stage as a standalone title in which they're building an immense world with massive scope. Something we would not have received if it came bundled in with Part 2. Naughty Dog deciding to go all in on a multiplayer experience is not the same as most studios. It goes without saying that whenever we get a new Naughty Dog game, the bar gets raised in the benchmark set in most areas of game development. But what does that mean when the multiplayer team grows large and wants to give it a shot beyond the scope of a standard multiplayer blueprint? It means you should probably pay attention. The game and its narrative look to be set mainly in San Francisco, and the single piece of concept art they provided evokes scale. It was known from prior leaks that a Battle Royale mode was being prototyped. At the bare minimum, we're going to be looking at the most graphically intensive and immersive multiplayer yet. When photorealism is a factor in the most fine-tuned third-person gameplay to date, you have something that is not only going to stand out, but attract the attention of a completely different crowd of people that might have never even played The Last of Us. But what crowd is that? While there are plenty of people out there who don't know what The Last of Us is, the crowd I'm talking about doesn't even know that they exist yet. And they won't until 2023 when The Last of Us hits HBO. The story Naughty Dog told in 2013 is a special one. There's a reason it's revered as one of the best stories told in gaming, and there's a reason it will consume their studio's output for likely the next 4 years until the teased new PS5 project is out. There's also a good chance that that is The Last of Us Part 3. The HBO show is claimed to not be as far away as we think, and with its timing, a serious marketing machine is being created, and it's going to work. The HBO show is simply a catalyst for what Sony and Naughty Dog want to happen. If the show captures the attention of its new audience, some of them will become curious, and now they'll have a shiny new version of a game it was based on to hook them into another medium. A medium where the IP is dominant and active. They happen to have close to 40 hours of a single player experience to get through, should they choose to stay. And after that, factions too. What if you're already a Last of Us fan and you're not yet sold on watching the HBO show? Well, now they've likely piqued your interest with the announcement of Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker having large roles in the show. These products are going to feed each other in a loop until Part 3 comes out. And Factions is also going to be the big start Sony needs to head its 10+ live service games they claim to be working on. The most interesting part of all these releases is the chance that it turns the conversation in a new direction. The first game was universally loved, and it's about to again be the most recent release in the franchise. People that are upset over a number of choices in Part 2 are going to show up for this remake for Joel, and it could become the main topic of conversation again until the release of Factions. So while remaking The Last of Us wasn't necessary, the positives for Naughty Dog far outweigh the negative. In a 12-month period, they can make The Last of Us as an IP push people in the direction of Factions 2 constantly, which will, if everything goes according to plan, become their biggest moneymaker. If you would have asked me 2 years ago if I wanted Naughty Dog's next new single-player project to be The Last of Us Part 3, I would have given you a confident no. The depression roller coaster that is that game is an experience I've never had anything like before. It puts you in a place mentally you need a break from. But the way they have taken the last 2 years to set up the Last of Us machine has me thinking otherwise. Having Part 1 and Part 2 on a level playing field technically, along with what we hope is the most impressive live service game to date and an HBO show to top it off, all leading to the final game in the trilogy, feels right. Why stop the momentum at this point? They've also split their team up again, which we haven't seen since Uncharted 3 and The Last of Us were made in tandem. Who's to say they can't work out a new IP? The last 3 years have felt long in Naughty Dog time. It feels good to see them finally show their hand. There's so much to look forward to. The Last of Us Remake feels like a good reset point in the conversation. They've officially uttered the word multiplayer on a stage and outside of a tweet. It's all we've ever wanted. The light is at the end of the tunnel, and if at the end of that tunnel we can't all agree on something Last of Us related, at least we can take it out on each other in Factions now. After all, it's officially real.